Good morning, afternoon, or evening to all you Sip and Talkers, whatever time zone you were in right now. Welcome to Sip and Talk. I'm Joe.
Sunny.
So, I have to ask, have you ever experienced the sheer, soul-crushing exhaustion of getting dragged into an online argument with Chinese ultranationalists?
Oh.
You know the demographic, right?
Yeah.
The folks often called little pinks across social media. You wade into a comment section thinking you're just, debating a simple geopolitical fact, and suddenly it feels like you're communicating with someone from a completely different dimension.
Yeah, completely different dimension is the perfect way to put it.
Right. And you just walk away with a massive headache.
I mean, I am deeply familiar with that headache. But, the fatigue you're feeling, it isn't actually from losing a debate.
Right. It's something else entirely.
Exactly. It comes from the realization that your opponent's internal logic, it basically bundles completely unrelated concepts into this one giant unbreakable knot.
Yeah.
Like if you attempt to use objective facts, they just ram you with a wall of raw national emotion.
Totally.
And if you try to talk about, practical legal jurisdiction, they throw 5,000 years of ancient history right at your face. They are just operating on a totally different frequency.
It is maddening. I mean, it feels exactly like questioning a company's current management team about their quarterly earnings, only for the CEO to point to a 100-year-old corporate logo and scream, if you question this logo, you are betraying the entire brand.
Yeah, that's exactly what it is.
It's a complete bait and switch. And we've really noticed this escalating lately because so many of you listeners have been messaging us saying you're getting trapped in this exact same logic loop online, whether it's on Twitter, Reddit, or YouTube.
It is a brilliantly designed trap, honestly. So here is our roadmap for today to help you dismantle it.
Awesome. Let's hear it.
First, we're going to look at the complex reality, unpacking the actual history and the legal regime shifts that created this confusion in the first place.
Right.
Second, we'll give you the 3-second takedown. We are completely ditching the dense political science today and using everyday American analogies to disarm this trap instantly.
Love that.
And third, the macro view. We're going to zoom out to explain how Xi Jinping's rise to power deliberately fused the party, the state, and the culture, tighter than at any point in modern history.
I am so ready for this. To everyone listening, grab your coffee or your beer, because we are jumping right into today's Sip and Talk. Cheers.
Let's get right into it.
So first, I think we really need to explore the psychology of why these arguments feel so utterly impossible to navigate.
Yeah, it's a deep psychological barrier.
Because, when a person who has grown up inside that specific mainland educational system hears a simple factual statement like, Taiwan is not part of China, they aren't hearing a dry dispute about international law.
Not at all.
Right, because of how their curriculum is structured, what they actually hear is your identity, your family's history, and your entire cultural worldview are invalid.
And that is the core of the friction right there. It triggers this massive, visceral wave of cognitive dissonance.
Yep. Completely.
Because in their educational ecosystem, especially since the patriotic education campaigns of the 1990s, the concepts of national identity, cultural heritage, and the current ruling regime, they've all been seamlessly blended into a single entity.
Wow, so they literally can't separate them.
Exactly. So when you introduce external information that contradicts the political side of that triad, their brain doesn't process it as political analysis. It processes it as an existential threat. They just immediately drop into identity defense mode.
Which honestly explains the wildly predictable patterns we see in the comment sections.
Right. It's always the same playbook.
Defense mechanism number one is always to attack the messenger. You immediately get hit with, you're just paid by foreign forces, or you're brainwashed by Western imperialism.
Every single time.
Psychologically, it is so much easier for them to label the speaker as corrupt than it is to actually update a core belief that their entire reality is built upon.
It's classic motivated reasoning. If the brain can just invalidate the source of the discomfort, well, it doesn't have to do the heavy lifting of evaluating the actual argument.
Exactly.
And if attacking the messenger fails, they just default to defense mechanism number 2, which is absolute denial.
Right. Everything becomes a conspiracy.
Yeah, they categorize the facts as fake news or cognitive warfare. The internal equation is very simple. New information equals a fabricated attack. Therefore, my original worldview remains pristine and safe.
But let's talk about the absolute asymmetry of this debate, because it's genuinely unfair for the person trying to argue in good faith.
Oh, Completely unfair.
There's this concept called Brandolini's Law, or basically the bullshit asymmetry principle.
I love that principle.
Right. It takes literally 1 second to type China in all caps and invoke this massive unearned emotional response.
Yeah, zero effort required.
But for us to untangle that knot, it takes 5 minutes of exhausting historical lectures. You find yourself trying to explain the 1949 regime changes, bringing up UN Resolution 2758, and, defining the nuanced differences between cultural China, the Republic of China, and the People's Republic of China.
It's exhausting just listening to that list.
Exactly. By the time you're halfway through, the internet has moved on and everyone is asleep. The opponent is essentially exploiting cognitive load.
It is weaponized equivocation. They basically take thousands of years of cultural history and modern political jurisdiction, stuff them into one single word, China, and force you to do the exhausting labor of separating them.
Which nobody has time for on Twitter.
Right. And you're entirely right. Lecturing random people on the internet about 1970s United Nations resolutions is just a phenomenally terrible way to win an argument.
Which is why we need to translate this into a language that actually resonates.
Absolutely.
If we drop the academic jargon, how do we bring this into a Silicon Valley boardroom or an American sports bar? We need something punchy.
I know you've been taking notes on this. Let's hear the new tactics.
Okay, we need the 3-second American takedown. You know what this entire dynamic actually reminds me of? The Disney and Star Wars buyout.
Okay, I like where this is going. Walk me through that.
Think about it. China, as a concept, is this massive, rich, 5,000-year-old cultural IP. It is beloved, it is historic, and it belongs to the people who participate in it. It is Star Wars.
Yeah, the cultural phenomenon.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Now, the PRC, the political regime founded in 1949, is Disney. Disney bought Lucasfilm in 2012.
Okay, I see it.
If Disney suddenly released a public statement demanding that you must swear absolute, unquestioning allegiance to their current CEO just because you love the original 1977 Star Wars movies, you would call them insane.
You'd laugh them out of the room.
Right. You can absolutely love the culture, the history, and the IP without pledging your undying loyalty to the new management team.
That is a remarkably clean way to frame it. The current regime is really just the corporate entity that currently holds the rights to manage the mainland territory. They didn't invent the 5,000 years of culture, just like Disney didn't invent lightsabers. They are the management, not the brand.
And sticking with the tech scene for a second, look at what just happened with Twitter and Elon Musk.
Oh, perfect example.
Right. Musk buying Twitter and renaming it X in 2022 doesn't mean X retroactively invented all the internet culture, the memes, and the viral moments of the 2010s.
Right, the users built that.
Exactly. The new management does not own the past. They just own the current servers.
Yeah.
You cannot claim credit for a cultural phenomenon that existed centuries before your political party was even a concept.
That maps perfectly onto the timeline. I mean, the PRC management team is 75 years old. Taking credit for a 5,000-year-old heritage is a massive, massive overreach of corporate branding.
Totally. And for the sports fans listening, let's look at the jurisdictional side of things. The Brooklyn Dodgers moved to Los Angeles in 1958, right?
Yeah, broke a lot of hearts in New York.
They kept the name, they kept the franchise history. But just because they share that legacy, it doesn't mean the mayor of Los Angeles suddenly has the legal municipal right to govern Brooklyn, New York today.
That cuts right to the heart of the jurisdictional fallacy. And honestly, when you connect that sports analogy back to that dreaded UN Resolution 2758, it suddenly makes perfect sense.
Yes, exactly. Let's break that down.
In 1971, the United Nations didn't redraw a map. They basically just swapped out the corporate representatives for the China seat at the global boardroom table.
Right.
They basically said, the old management team is out. The new management team gets to sit in this chair. They changed the name tag at the desk.
They just changed the name tag. They didn't hand over the title deed to a completely separate piece of real estate.
Exactly. They did not hand over the keys to Taiwan, which is a property that the PRC has never actually managed for a single day since its founding.
Not a single day.
Right. Deciding who gets to attend the board meeting in New York is completely different from deciding who holds the legal deed to a specific island.
So, if the distinction between the brand and the management is that glaringly obvious when we put it in normal, everyday terms, why is Beijing's current leadership so utterly obsessed with blurring those lines?
That's the million-dollar question.
To understand this, we really have to look at what might be the ultimate boardroom miscalculation in modern political history, the rise of Xi Jinping.
Yeah. This is where the mechanics of power get really, really fascinating because To understand the current obsession with this blended ultra-nationalist identity, you have to look at regime survival.
Okay, take us back.
Let's take you back to the window between 2007 and 2012. The CCP elders, essentially the retiring board of directors of the party, were looking for a new CEO, and they were terrified.
What specifically were they looking to avoid?
They wanted to avoid a charismatic strongman. They were looking at highly aggressive, populist political heavyweights like Bo Xilai, who was building this massive, almost cult-like base in Chongqing.
Oh, right. He was getting way too popular.
Exactly. And the elders remembered the absolute chaos of the Cultural Revolution. They liked their system of collective leadership.
Where everyone gets a say.
Yeah, they wanted a system where a bunch of guys in suits sat in a room, shared the power, balanced the factions, and everyone got a piece of the pie. They wanted someone who was predictable.
They were looking for a soft persimmon, someone they could mold.
That was the consensus. And she appeared to be the perfect soft persimmon. He was low profile. He didn't have a massive, aggressive political faction behind him.
He seemed safe.
Right. He was seen as a safe, pure-blooded, red second-generation guy because his father was a revolutionary hero.
Right.
So the elders looked at him and calculated, okay, he respects the party hierarchy, he's mild-mannered, we can install him as the figurehead, and we can just keep pulling the strings from behind the curtain after we officially retire.
Hold on. I'm sorry, I have to laugh, because that is literally every hostile boardroom takeover in Silicon Valley history.
It really is.
It's like when visionary founders bring in some super quiet, boring CFO just to appease the investors and keep the books stable. Yeah. And then, 6 months later, the founders try to use their key cards and realize they were locked out of their own building because the quiet CFO just orchestrated a boardroom coup and fired everyone.
It's exactly that. It's the principal agent problem playing out on a massive geopolitical scale. The elders, who were the principals, thought they hired a compliant agent.
But they were so wrong.
They completely underestimated the immense inherent institutional power of the office they just handed him. They assumed the man would conform to the office.
Right.
Instead, once he got the keys to the military, the intelligence apparatus, and the state bureaucracy, he weaponized those tools to systematically destroy the puppeteers.
And the mechanism he used to do that was the anti-corruption campaign, wasn't it?
Oh, absolutely.
It's brilliant in a deeply Machiavellian way. He can't just fire the board of directors. But if you launch a clean up the company initiative, you can arrest your political rivals, and the public will actually cheer for you while you do it.
It was a complete masterclass in bureaucratic consolidation. And this isn't unique to modern politics. I mean, we see this pattern throughout history.
Like where?
Think about ancient Rome. Agrippina poisoned her husband to put her young, seemingly easily distracted teenage son, Nero, on the throne. She thought she would just rule the Roman Empire through him.
Wait, didn't Nero just turn around and have her assassinated the second he realized he actually controlled the Praetorian Guard? That is exactly the same dynamic.
It is the exact same dynamic. The person with the actual swords makes the rules. Or look at the Soviet Union after Stalin died.
What happened there?
The powerful party elders picked Nikita Khrushchev to lead because they honestly thought he was a buffoon-like, a clown they could easily push around while they ran the country.
And let me guess, that didn't work out.
Within a few years, he had outmaneuvered and purged all of them. The elders always think they can control the system, forgetting that the system inherently empowers whoever is sitting in the big chair.
The arrogance of the old guard is always their downfall. But let's look at the actual fallout of this takeover. Because she didn't just consolidate power. By dismantling that collective leadership model, he fundamentally broke the operating system that made the whole Chinese economic miracle possible in the first place.
He absolutely broke the core engine of their success. When you strip away a system of collective consensus and replace it with a structure where only one man's vision matters, you completely paralyze the bureaucracy below him.
Because everyone is terrified.
Exactly. We saw this manifest most tragically with their institutions. Officials became absolutely terrified to make any independent decisions. Because in a system driven by loyalty to one man, making a pragmatic mistake isn't just an error, it's viewed as political treason.
Which totally explains the absolute nightmare of the zero-COVID policy.
Yes, perfect example.
It wasn't about public health at a certain point. Local officials were so terrified that a single case breaking out in their district would result in them being purged, that their only logical move was extreme overcompliance.
Right.
That is how you end up with local police literally welding people inside their apartment buildings. It's a bureaucracy running on pure terror.
And that paralysis bled directly into the economy. For decades, the engine of their incredible growth was this dynamic, slightly unruly, highly innovative private sector.
Yeah, they're building incredible things.
But a consolidated one-man power structure views alternative centers of wealth and influence as a direct threat. That is why we saw the massive, sudden crackdowns on their biggest tech giants and the total destruction of the private education sector.
Let's pause on the tech crackdown for a second, because from an American perspective, that was just wild to watch.
Unbelievable.
We should say we aren't giving any financial advice here, just analyzing the context. But you have companies like Alibaba and Tencent acting as the engines of your digital economy.
Yeah.
But because data is the new oil, the party realized that tech billionaires had way too much leverage. They couldn't allow anyone outside the inner circle to hold that kind of cultural and economic power.
Precisely. The logic of absolute control dictated that they had to crush their most successful entrepreneurs. And historically speaking, that shattered domestic and international investor confidence.
Yeah, the money got scared.
Fast forward to today, and you have a society where the youth are facing incredibly high unemployment rates. That environment birthed the lying flat movement.
Right, where young people are just giving up on the rat race.
Yeah, they're refusing to buy houses or start families because the traditional paths to upward mobility have been completely choked off. Combine that with a rapidly aging demographic crisis, and the internal pressure is immense.
So if the internal economic engine is stalling out, how does this ripple out to impact us? Because this isn't just, a distant historical event happening in a vacuum. This shift directly hits our shores, our economy, and our policies.
It changes everything about global engagement. To maintain his legitimacy while the economy slows down, Beijing had to completely abandon its old strategy of hide your strength, bide your time.
The Deng Xiaoping era is over.
Completely over. They traded quiet economic expansion for aggressive, hyper-nationalistic wolf warrior diplomacy. When you can no longer promise your citizens that they will be wealthier tomorrow, you have to create an external enemy to justify the internal tightening.
And that aggressive posture is exactly what woke Washington up. For years, we were perfectly happy to trade, integrate our supply chains, and just assume that economic wealth would naturally lead to political liberalization.
That was the grand illusion.
But when the rhetoric escalated and the intellectual property theft became undeniable, our government had to fundamentally pivot. You saw this massive, rare bipartisan awakening in Washington. It started with Trump's tariffs, but it definitely didn't stop there.
The tariffs were really just the opening salvo. It evolved into a structural reevaluation of global trade.
Exactly. It evolved into our current tech war. It evolved into us realizing that our critical supply chains were hopelessly dependent on a system run by a single, unpredictable boardroom dictator.
Yeah, we were way too exposed.
We are now actively engaged in massive supply chain de-risking. Look at what our government is doing with the CHBS. We are spending billions of dollars to bring semiconductor manufacturing back to our own shores because we finally understood the vulnerability of leaving our most critical technology exposed to that kind of geopolitical volatility.
It is a complete paradigm shift. The 1990s era of assuming economic engagement automatically equals peaceful integration is officially over.
So, to synthesize this whole journey we've been on today, the conflation of 5,000 years of glorious cultural history with a 75-year-old political regime isn't an accident.
No, not at all.
It isn't a misunderstanding by internet trolls. It is a highly deliberate, engineered survival tactic. It's being utilized by a leadership team that has systematically stripped away its own economic and institutional safety nets and now has to rely on weaponized nationalism to keep the ship afloat.
That is the perfect summary. They have bound the concept of the state to the culture so tightly that criticizing the government's economic policy feels to the public like a direct attack on their ancestral heritage.
Right.
It is the ultimate shield for a management team that is running out of options.
Which brings me to a final provocative thought for you to mull over as you go about your day.
Let's hear it.
If a governing regime ties its entire legitimacy to a 5,000-year historical mandate rather than its actual current economic performance, what happens when the money actually stops flowing?
That's a scary thought.
Think back to our corporate analogy. How does a management team keep its employees from quitting or revolting when the company stops growing entirely, the bonuses dry up, and all you have left to offer them is a speech about how great the company logo used to be?
That is the multi-trillion-dollar question for the 21st century. And before we wrap up, just to close out on a note of absolute clarity, We want to remind everyone that our discussion today is purely an analysis of political structures, institutional mechanics, and objective history.
Yes, very important point.
We aren't here to take partisan sides, and there is absolutely no criticism or discrimination here against any nation, any culture, or its people. If anything, separating a beautiful historic culture from a temporary political management team is the best way to respect that culture. We are just committed to independent thought and untangling these massive geopolitical narratives.
I could not have said it better myself. We love breaking these concepts down with you and giving you the tools to see through the noise. So please, cheerfully hit that subscribe button to Sip and Talk so you never miss one of these deep dives.
We appreciate all of you tuning in.
And before we sign off, a huge warm shout out to our good friend Mickey. You have got to check out his YouTube channel, Mickey to Life. He is posting some absolutely amazing new travel vlogs highlighting his latest adventures, and you definitely don't want to miss them. Go show him some love.
Highly recommend his channel. The production value is great.
Thanks for hanging out and sipping with us today, everyone. See you next time.